We have been discussing about many different topics, and actually now one thing that also Lars was also mentioning is to think a little bit bigger, a little bit more into the future. And after lunch there was also a video already a little bit showing what the innovation could be or what the market stakeholders in Europe are considering. But it's always not good to just look at the videos, it's better to ask the people involved. So we have invited here also people from Spain, from Frankfurt, also to explain on these things. So, as the moderator of the last panel, which will cover the role of the digital euro in modernizing Europe's economy, the moderator will be Crespo. Please join us on stage. He's the founding partner and chief editor at the Nordic Fintech magazine, but not only. He's also the head of program of the annual Baltic Fintech Days. So he knows a lot what is going on in the field, and that's why he's the best moderator for this panel. However, as panelists, I would like to invite on stage first from Bizum, the Business Development Director, Martín López. I hope I pronounce your name. Very good. Second, the head of the Fintech Hub Lithuania, Greta Ranonytė. And third, from the European Central Bank, the lead digital euro user research and experimentation, Nico Schmidt. Yes. And last, from Revolut, the head of EU government affairs, Sergio Tringali. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Rainer. Well, so we've discussed at length various different aspects of the digital euro. We talked about the readiness, we talked about the resilience, we talked about the market fit. But this panel will focus on touching upon whether the digital euro can really help modernize the European economy. We're going to be talking about things like readiness for adoption, about trust, about future-proofing and using technologies like AI on the back of it. So I'm sure this is going to be quite an exciting panel. I encourage all the panelists to please interact with each other. Let's try to make this as dynamic as possible. I know already that there are some views that might not are fully aligned, so I expect to be there at least some back and forth and some debate on some opinions here. But before we start, elevator pitch, each one of you just tell me briefly who you are and what you do. Let's start over there with you, Sergio.
Hi, thanks, Chris. Good to be here. Thanks for this invitation. It's very thrilling to discuss this issue. I'm the EU Government Affairs head of the Revolut. I'm based in Brussels, covering all the issues related to the financial sector, and of course, we're also covering the digital euro project.
Thank you, Sergio. Nico.
Hi, good afternoon also to everyone from my side. So I represent user research and experimentation from the Digital Euro project. So I want to put one more or a couple of more sentences of what was just raised before on the demand side. So we have been focusing also more on the demand side. So we've been working with market participants on the Digital Euro. How can we make innovation work together with PSPs? And I'm happy to expand a bit more on that in the next points.
Thank you, Nico.
Thanks.
Greta.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Greta Ranonytė. I'm the head of Lithuanian Fintech Association called Fintech Hub LT. We currently unite 94 members in the country, and I'm really happy to be here representing non-bank payment service providers because we talked a lot about banks, so it's great to have fintechs represented as well. And thank you for the invitation.
Thank you, Greta. And Martín.
Well, first of all, thanks for having us. I'm coming representing Bizum as the Business Development Director. For those who don't know about Bizum, Bizum is the Spanish mobile payment solution that banks decided to launch almost 10 years ago. And in the past 9 years, we have managed to build a strong brand, business model around payments, both for P2P and e-commerce. We're now working for POS based on NFC, also interoperability with colleagues from Portugal, Italy, and other markets like Wiro, Ludovic mentioned before, and also studying what the ecosystem for these solutions needs to have in the digital euro platform in order to make it compatible to what we're doing today. So we're excited to be here.
All right, that's great. So we've got representation from various angles of the market participants. And I would just like to start with a bit of an incendiary question. And that's directly directed to you, Nico. We have in the market solutions like stablecoins. We have instant payments. We have Bizum operating in the south of Europe. We have mobile pay operating in the Nordics, where you can send money seamlessly through a phone number. So why now? Why talk about the digital euro now? And from a technology perspective, why is this the relevant time to be talking about this?
Yeah. Thanks a lot for that question. So I think there is still a lot of room to innovate and to make people's lives easier, right? So I talked a little bit that we are working with market participants. Piero mentioned it also this morning that we will continue to work with market participants in the future to explore exactly how that can work. And I think from my perspective, it's two main things that we can improve. It's integrating payments better in the customer experience. So how can that work? I'm talking about examples where we are talking about, I have a running app that's connected to my payment app, and if my son, for example, runs 10K a week, then maybe he gets a little bonus. So this is one side of the coin, but also on the very other end, we do see room for improvements, right? So we see room for improvements for tailoring solutions really to the actual customer. So we've heard earlier from the consumer side that maybe some people actually prefer safety a little bit over convenience. So maybe some people would really like to click upon one tab, but maybe for others that doesn't feel secure enough. We talked a little bit about elderly consumers that are not onboarded already in the digital world. Maybe it feels too insecure to them to just have an app where they feel like they're not in control anymore. They feel like they're hitting a couple of buttons and maybe, yeah, some amount of their money is gone. So they want to have maybe additional security layers actually embedded in their UX, so in how they would interact with the product. So from that perspective, yes, there is a lot of innovation in payments already. Yes, there are advancements basically every day, but I think there is still a lot that we can contribute. And how can we as the ECB, or with the digital euro specifically, contribute? We believe we are here really a facilitator for the process, right? So we don't need to provide everything, but we want to provide the infrastructure that actually then PSPs, market participants, can build on that to provide additional value-generating solutions that consumers actually want to have, so that we don't have innovation for innovation's sake, but that we do it together with the consumers and with the PSPs to make sure that consumers have benefits, PSPs can get something out of it, they are part of the business model, and then we can see what we can do on the central bank level to facilitate that process.
All right, well, that's a great answer, Nico. Now, we've heard throughout the day that there's a lot of benefits to the infrastructure from a technology perspective. We even heard that this is no longer a technology discussion because the technology is there. But I think, especially in the previous panel, we heard that there's, I will rephrase it, that this is a solution looking for a problem. And as such, it would still require adoption of the users. So maybe let me start with you, Sergio. Why would the users adopt a digital euro?
That's a good question. Actually, we as Revolut, we contributed together with Bocconi University in Milan to a study that is actually addressing and trying to understand why a consumer should actually use digital euro. I mean, in whatever form we may want to imagine this digital euro to be at some point. It was interesting because, first of all, we wanted to scope this research exactly on the user part. We won't exclude that we may cover at some point also the more merchant side, but starting from the consumers, because this is what we wanted to understand. And it was interesting in the finding, because in this study, of course, we also kind of consider different types of digital euro, whether it's more just a simple version, a digital version of cash, or something else. But if we take digital euro as it is, as was the original project, and as it seemed to develop, it was encouraging to see that 47% of all the responders to the survey, just to give you a little bit of the numbers, we sent it to 2 million customers in Europe across all the EU27, and we received 17,000 respondents from different age level, education, profession. So I think it also kind of make a good picture of the, we could call it average customer. And the interesting part is that 47% of these people said they would use digital euro as a means of payment together with the others. So it tells us interesting things. First of all, because there is a sort of a encouraging view towards digital euro as a means for payment. even though together with others. So once again, as we heard before in the previous panel, it's important to have also the opportunity to have different choices, not just digital euro and that's it. And at the same time, I think, and this is something I also wanted to share, we understood that a majority of them were the respondents that were in favor with the lower purchasing power. And this tells us, I think, two things. One, it's a little bit pessimistic, because it shows that we're leaving aside a part of the population that feels kind of far from the financial sector, basically. They're not having the access to all the payment methods we all have, smartphones or whatever. And the more optimistic side, which was also, I think, I liked from the previous panel, that the digital euro, if conceived in the right way, could actually be a good medium to get that level playing field we want. So in order to enable these people that outside feel to be excluded from the financial sector to actually get close and to have the chance to finally pay with this. I wanted to share, again, this findings, because I think they are pretty interesting to kind of have a picture of what customers understanding right now consider the relatively limited understanding we'll have of what the digital euro will be in the near future.
Absolutely, and with 70,000 respondents, we can say that that's definitely statistically significant. So there's something to pay attention to there. Greta, I'd like to hear your perspective as a representative of businesses that would eventually perhaps become merchants or become enablers of the use of the digital euro. What is it that you're hearing in your ecosystem, which is probably relevant to mention that it's the ecosystem with the highest number of licensed fintechs in Europe?
I would like to be honest by sitting here on this stage. Not much is being heard in the market, especially in fintechs, about the digital euro. And I think that's part of the problem. That's why we are here and we are talking about it. As they learned actually today that it will be mandatory for banks to provide digital euro for their clients, right, as a means of payment. It is not yet mandatory for non-bank PSPs. So from our perspective, then the question is, what kind of new business models can we build on that to offer digital euro to the clients? There are many questions involved with this, and it really depends on the current business models that the companies have. It's more about incentives and how it's going to be priced and who is going to get what kind of share of the incentive from the fintech's perspective. Let's say I've heard quite a lot of different aspects today, and I would like to come back on the demand side, if I may. I'm not sure whether we are talking why consumers would use digital euro, but do consumers actually know what digital euro is currently or what it's supposed to be? Because when I was doing research, at least for myself for this conference, I read a lot of different things. It seems that a lot of people are still thinking that it's part of cash, or it should replace cash, which today we learned it shouldn't. Cash should stay separate, and digital euro is separate from cash. Then today we heard a lot that it has to replace cards or third-party systems that we are using because of security reasons. Okay, that's fine. That is a good reason. When I was looking into the ECB's website and what kind of incentives there are for consumers, a lot of stress was also given to bank transfers, and you can use digital euro for bank transfers. And reading that from a market participant, for me, it raised some concerns. Because with the current changes that we had, with SEPA payments, with instant payments, with the availability for non-bank payment services providers to connect to Target directly as well, where we already offer those kind of fast, secure, reliable bank transfers, it seems that digital euro creates competition not only to third-party payment schemes, but also to non-bank payment service providers. So that's just a concern that I am, hearing from the market. And now coming back a little bit on creating new business models, it's about basically incentives. And after today's discussion, I would not raise question as to why we should do that, because we will either do it or we will be out of touch with the reality of what's happening, because I see that digital euro will be part of the ecosystem, and we have to build something on top on top of that. So I would ask the question not to why, but what can we do with the digital euro and the business models that fintechs offer?
Right, so I'm picking up here perhaps a trend that there is still more education to be done to the market, both to the participants from the business perspective, merchants, as well as the end users, the citizens, right? A follow-up question on this for you, Martin. Is the digital euro, from your perspective, driving innovation? Is it based on additional innovation? Or will it just add additional red tape? And I'm saying this as a company that has managed to remove a lot of the friction in payments, especially in P2P in the south of Europe.
It's a good point, and just to come up a little bit on the educational part, so we think that at least in those markets where there are already big payment champions, like Bizum in the case of Spain, we have other brands, Mobile Pay, you mentioned, Wiro has been here. We think that probably these solutions are the ones that can really act as catalysts for the digital euro to be adopted. So we believe that this is probably the best way for users to learn about the digital euro and to adopt it. For that to happen, there needs to be this coexistence that we have been mentioning all over the session, where there can be room for business models to be applied, for the user experience that users are trusting to be applied, for the brand to remain relevant. Mm-hmm. But with that happening, we think that that can be a good catalyst. And when we come to innovation, we think that this is the point where the digital euro has probably the biggest value added to bring to the table. And in our view, it's not so much on providing peer-to-peer payments, which we believe that are more or less solved today, either through solutions like us, through interoperability with other players, or through other players like Revolut, who are doing very well. But probably on the things that the market is not covering. And in our side, we see two main values. One is the offline capabilities. This is somewhere where probably the public sector has a big role in ensuring that we have this type of capabilities, and where we believe that the private market will be glad to chip in to whatever the ECB might want to do there. And also conditional payments. This is why we have been collaborating in this experimentation phase with the ECB. We've been one of the pioneering companies, and we have to concur on the fact that today the European payment rail for de facto, which is SEPA, is basic in the sense that it doesn't allow for this type of complex transactions. And we agree that having a standard that would allow us to apply more complex business logics, payment on delivery, smart payment capabilities, could be useful also for solutions like us. But for us, this is built on top of these rules, requirements, and capabilities that need to be defined properly, as our colleagues from the previous panel were mentioning, so that the coexistence between digital euro and solutions can be effective and not in competition.
Right. And Nico, what did you say about this, perhaps this concern that exists in the market between innovation and red tape, knowing, of course, that we've heard throughout the day that there's going to be regulatory frameworks, and there's all this is in the works at the moment. What efforts are being done in order to ensure that this is a seamless experience for whoever decides to adopt it at the end?
Yeah, thanks a lot for the question. And I think my colleagues also mentioned it this morning already. So there is a lot that we actually do to make sure that it's not becoming a burden for PSPs, right? But it becomes an actual opportunity. So I would say the opportunity does not only come from technical innovation or anything like that, but it comes actually from the rule book, right? It comes from the rules and the standards that can then throughout the euro area hopefully more easily be used. So, for example, I would say a digital euro that facilitates that a fintech in Tallinn can have onboarded consumers on the next day in Italy or in Spain. This is a big business opportunity, I would say, right? And these are opportunities that hopefully would then directly translate to new business models that could be implemented, which are not necessarily coming from technical innovation alone, but also from the standards and rules that we would be providing, and then that the private economy can hopefully then work on. And maybe just another remark on the other aspect that consumers don't know it. I mean, we've heard also the 67% quoted this morning earlier who already, when being confronted with the digital euro, would be willing to use it. I agree there is lots of more engagement that we have to do, right? It's not like we issue a digital euro next week, right? So I think it's still fine that consumers don't know about it yet. We still have some time to catch up, but absolutely it's necessary for consumers to pick it up, to engage more, activate them more, entertain them a bit more, and also make sure that they understand the product and then also the offering and what's getting better or easier with the digital euro for them.
I just wanted to, hearing you, I have some thoughts on that. As Mr. Piero Cipollone in the morning said, that people are much smarter than we sometimes believe, and they know what is the difference between public and private money. Last year, unfortunately, these are unfortunate news, at least for me, last year OECD did a research in Lithuania about literacy, financial literacy and other literacy as well, and they determined that 38% of Lithuanian general public, of adults, are only at the level 1 of proficiency in literacy, meaning that they only understand simple short sentences and lists, but nothing more. I would love to believe that this is not true, but these are the results of the OECD. So maybe we are thinking that people know more than they actually do. Of course, if I was asked a question as a consumer, will I use digital euro? I would say maybe I still don't know what it is. But I guess we, as as I'm representing payment service providers, we need to explain to the consumer what the digital euro is, and this is not. There is no privacy with it. It's not going to be cash. Of course, you will be able to pay it offline, but I will, as a PSP, I will have to do KYC, and then I will have to adhere to AML requirements still. So I will look into the transactions, yes? I'm not sure whether the consumer knows that part, and also for me as a PSP, what kind of role do I play in that regard? For example, if I am, looking into the transactions as for the AML requirements, and I decide to offboard the client, where does the client give the complaint? Because digital euro must be accessible to everyone, right? But then I made a decision that maybe I have concerns in AML and I have to offboard that client. So who bears that responsibility then, and what kind of role do I play in the accessibility of digital euro for the consumers, and how do I present these kind of issues to the end user? A lot of questions.
Can I just briefly react, maybe just on one point? Because yes, I mean, I would actually also go a little bit further and would also say consumers don't want to have an online retail payment product that is not including AML, but then also checks against the financing of terroristic acts, right? So I'm quite sure that this is actually in line with consumer expectations, that these are services to be provided. But then I would also go again in that direction and say, yes, you're saying you would need to conduct those checks. But consumers are also saying it's fine if banks are conducting those checks because it's building the trust in the payment system. And if you're conducting those checks, that doesn't necessarily mean that we would in the end need to see then the user data, right? So we from a consumer perspective are out of the picture there. We don't have to get access to this kind of data, and this also makes the process a little bit simpler for us because we can say from the first place, we don't need access for that. The government is, quote unquote, not influencing anything in that perspective. We don't have access, we cannot see it, we cannot link transactions to people. There's nothing of the like that we're even technically capable of. So it's actually, I think, an opportunity for us to step out of that process and then make sure that consumers build valuable relationships with their PSPs. And then maybe just a small remark on the offline, because there, in fact, we do have the opportunity to potentially, from a regulation, have lighter checks to make sure there is a little bit of additional degree of freedom and privacy that users in the end then would actually have in their daily transactions.
All right, we're talking about modernizing Europe's economy, and the following question, I would like to address it directly to you, Sergio, and also to you, Martin. When we talk about the digital euro, we've discussed today that it could level the playing field by providing an alternative rail for payments. You work directly with the market. Let's start with you, Sergio. In your perspective, how can a digital euro infrastructure perhaps provide you with more alternatives to process and execute payments?
Yeah, well, I think as I was saying before, and as also the other panelists said, it's important to provide different alternatives. If we look at the payment landscape nowadays, even if you have our apps, for instance, and if you want to use innovative system like the A2A payment, I think it's fair, and this is probably should be the way forward in general, to kind of provide different ways. So you have Wero, we're part of Wero, and we think it's a great project we also have our own A2A. So the idea is the more we create, the more we give choices to the customer and to the merchants to actually explore different alternatives. There shouldn't be a competition. Because at the end of the day, if I just say, OK, that's my Revolut system is the best, you will get the best from security, you will get the best economic condition, it doesn't make sense, because we are in an environment, an international environment, where you have different alternatives. Maybe your counterpart actually prefers to use another system. The idea is to provide customers with a multiplicity of decisions. So this is how I think in this system, in this philosophy of the whole financial ecosystem, to have a digital euro as an additional tool that all the people, all the consumers may decide to say, OK, I want to pay this with the digital euro. So I think it has a great potential. There is, of course, the backing of the ECB that could ensure and make the consumer a little bit more trusted in this case, and say, OK, I have the ECB behind me that, of course, build trust. But, you know, from the same point, I think there are also aspects that revolves around the fact that we're finally thinking about a solution that's European. So we're trying also to give some variety when it comes to relying on the same usual international actors. So we are building a homegrown solution with the digital euro that, at the end of the day, it's really pan-European and oriented and inspired by competition. So I think with the entrance of digital euro, in a way of being, of course, well-connected, and as Greta was saying, to trying to make sure that all the actors in the financial ecosystem could participate, could bring their expertise, their know-how, because there is also, of course, a big piece of know-how to be included in that project. Then through this and through a legislation that is actually striking a good balance, we often, especially in Brussels, will discuss this trade-off between innovation and regulation. So also there, I think the co-legislator have this big responsibility, right, to try to strike this balance between an innovation-friendly regulation and, at the same time, something that will really inspire a good regulation to give good standards when it comes to security, to payments, to effectiveness, in order to build something that could integrate in this wider landscape of payments.
Right. Thank you, Sergio. Martin, will the digital euro make Bizum perhaps more competitive? Or companies like Bizum?
Before we jump in, Sergio forgot to mention Bizum is also a solution that Revolut is offering, like others, like Blix. So I think it's a good example on why, when there are incentives for market players to invest in a private solution, they do. So Revolut is present in different markets, and they see appetite on, OK, so let's be part of Bizum to compete in Spain, let's be Blix to compete in Poland, or Wiro to compete in France. So I think that's an example on the potential of private market solutions. We do think that the digital euro can help speeding up some of the standardization processes that need to take place in Europe. One of them, and we've been discussing over lunch before, for instance, access to European components for payment in terminals could be sped up by the digital euro. We acknowledge that, and we support that there are conversations around having European components at the terminals for the digital euro. We are fully endorsing that. Also, as we mentioned before, on the more complex transactions that can help us take from a basic standard like SEPA to something that we can fully standardize, and that would, in fact, facilitate interoperability too. But in this point, this is where we think that beyond having this, let's say, technological level playing field, we also need to ensure that this is built under a framework of level playing field in terms of recognition of solutions and also of capabilities. So we think that it would be important that if there is widespread adoption for NFC payments for the digital euro, there are not extra barriers for private solutions to access those components. If there is a requirement for third-party providers like Apple to open up certain components, those are not only open for the digital euro, those are open also for private solutions. So if we can build a level playing field from technical capabilities for PSPs all over Europe to access, and also build the legal framework so that private players can also play in that space, we think it will help solutions like us to not so much finding the technical solutions, but speeding up the process to get there faster.
Right. Okay. And Greta, the access to the SEPA network has been critical to get companies to build the ecosystem in Lithuania, right? That's been an added plus. Now, from your perspective, as someone that is at the core of the Lithuanian ecosystem, do you think that having access to the digital euro infrastructure will also help the development of local ecosystems across Europe?
I do believe that at the end of the day, a a company is interested in providing as many means of payments as possible to attract clients, because if the banks are offering many different means of payments, then of course fintechs have to as well, because then they will lose the fight of the competition fight. Of course, we need to understand the differences between banks and fintechs. Most of the fintechs are offering B2B services, so business to business, and digital euro is not part of business to business services. It's it's about the consumers. So I'm not sure whether it will drive innovation in that sense, as if we're talking about business to business. And of course, it's not, we are operating in Europe, but not only where the euro stands, right? We're also offering services in Poland and other countries that have national currencies. So it might, but not at the speed that we would maybe like to see the innovation going in other aspects. Or also there are some questions to be answered. In Lithuania, we have the biggest fintech subsector is of course payments because of access through central link to SEPA payments, but we also have quite a lot of crowdfunding platforms and peer-to-peer lending platforms where of course that are serviced by fintechs and who lends natural persons lend the money through those platforms, right? So will they be able to lend digital euros? Because at the end of the day, it's their personal money that sits at their bank account that they're giving through the platform to other persons or businesses. So will they be able to use digital euro? If yes, then there is a huge business case for fintechs as well, because we have the number of crowdfunding platforms are growing. So I think there are still some questions that might be answered already. We just don't know the answer of it, and this is it might be our problem that we are not invested too much into the topic, or maybe there is some miscommunication that hasn't reached us yet. But yes, I do believe there will be innovation. And just one part, if I may come back, of course, everything should have happened yesterday, as always. Now, especially at least in Lithuania, we have this great testing platform for digital euro, and unfortunately the digital euro is not here yet. There are quite a lot of trainings for being prepared in a crisis situation for general public happening, where people from the military are saying how we have to plan our routes of escape, how we have to bury food in that routes of escape, how we have to have cash with us, how we have to even bury the cash as well, and to the spots that is only known to us. So it's already happening. The thing that we are talking about preparing for a crisis, we are already preparing. It's just we're not talking about digital euro at all. Well, this is the time where we should be talking about digital euro with the general public.
Right, maybe just a question: is that a Baltic phenomenon that's happening right now, or do we see it in other regions like Spain or like Brussels? This preparedness, readiness.
We were out of light and electricity for one day in Spain.
That's true. That's true.
We can say that this has become a hot topic also in our case. And we were already working for some resilience mechanisms, but this has accelerated the debate on what do we need to have. So the reasons are probably different, but we are indeed also looking into that.
Yeah.
When it comes to digitalization, I mean, the Baltics make all us look like the bad scholars, because they're great in that. But maybe just a point to add on, building on what Greta just said, I think it's also important on that aspect of forward-looking when it comes to innovation, right? Because nowadays we focus on the rules, what should work, what the best digital euro version should be. But actually, especially when I discuss this with other players, so other fintechs, other banks, they're often forgetting what you can build on the platform. So as soon as you get this platform on top of the digital euro infrastructure, what are the services you could build on? Because this is where really the innovation race. So I haven't had the chance yet to have the discussion internally, but I'm pretty sure that as soon as there will be more clarity on what this will infrastructure be, all our geeks will say, oh, actually, this is something we could create on this, and this is how innovation at the end of the day comes up, and you have new services at a cheaper price with a higher standards of security and efficiency. So sometimes I think also the forward looking, as you are saying, right? So you're already studying what the digital euro could be. It's also a matter of approach, how you see things. So this could actually create and open up to new opportunities. And this is something that sometimes when discussing laws or technicalities, we tend to forget.
Yeah.
If I may very quickly, I fully agree with you. I think that this is where probably business model is key, because if you can create a platform that people and participants feel comfortable and encouraged to participate, we've lived it in Bizum, you will see all of these new use cases built on top and innovation. So we've seen it how, since the very beginning, when banks started really pushing forward Bizum, they started to ideate around new features. And one example is buy now, pay later. So now in Spain, banks do not envision building anything related buy now, pay later if it's not on top of Bizum. Why? Because it's where the users are, it's where adoption is, and because it's profitable for them. If we weren't profitable, if we didn't have that adoption, then they wouldn't be looking forward. So I think that in order to have this vision, it's key that the bases are strong so that they are motivated to look a bit ahead on time.
And thank you for that. I think that's a great segue to the next question, and that's for you, Nico. Help us understand, how is the digital euro developing as a future-proof solution on top of which you can build new technologies like AI, but also we're talking about conditional payments. Tell us a little bit more about what are the things that will be built on top of that platform that could make it even more a stronger incentive for the market to adopt it.
Thanks a lot for that. I mean, it's the perfect segue because it also allows me a bit to comment on the earlier comments. I think what's most important is that we're not doing this alone, right? So we're not sitting in the ECB ivory tower and thinking about how to innovate the market, right? So we're super happy that Revolut and also Bizum joined us in this process in the past 1.5 roughly years from when we initially launched the call for the first round of the innovation partnerships, that it's very clear from the beginning that we're going this way on exploring the innovative potential of the digital euro with market participants, with PSPs. We had IT providers in that call. We have merchant representatives in that call. So we're trying to have a very broad spectrum of interest holders in that call to make sure that we give everybody the opportunity to bring their ideas, right? So we can then engage on the ideas and then make sure to agree with them jointly on what is 1 or 2 or 3 of the important business models where we should set our focus on. So this is now what we have done in the past 1.5 years. There we focused specifically on conditional payments, right? So I mentioned the example in the beginning with a linked running app that you could have or with your customized user experience. But there's also way more. You can find this in the report that we published last week. There is focus on public transport, right? So we come from a lot of different cities here. I'm quite sure that the public transport in nearly every one of these cities looks very differently. Right? So there's very good examples on public transport working great in London, in Frankfurt. It's not that simple, just to cut it short. So there is lots of room for innovation still that I can see. And this is also why I'm happy to get that question, because we want to engage or continue to engage with market participants in the same way. Piero mentioned it this morning. We will continue also in the next phase of the program in an initiative like that. And there we can set a focus on additional use cases next to conditional payments to make sure that the digital euro is not only in the beginning, when it's going live, coming with the potential for innovative features like conditional payments, but that also further down the road, there is always the next thing coming. There is always some value that we can add, be it agentic AI or whatever the next value generating feature for users could be. So I'm then also maybe just a second to thank the organizers from the Estonian Central Bank, because for me it's the perfect opportunity that we can create those discussions now here today, and maybe, who knows, you're applying in the next round that we're publishing soon.
Indeed. All right. I just want to get your take on one last question. I know this is a big one, so it would be great if you can give me like a 30-second answer before we open the floor for questions from the audience. We know that one of the main concerns that the market participants might have when adopting the digital euro is the privacy concern. So what would you say for people that have a concern that the European Commission or the central governments could be looking into what they are spending their money into?
Yeah, maybe, so I mentioned some of the things on privacy already, right? So I think the most important thing is we don't have a reason to want to see this data, right? There is nothing that we would want to see this data. So we make sure that we don't have access to any personal data in our processing. But then there is also a second component in the context of conditional payments. It's also important to draw the distinction between programmable money and conditional payments, right? So we also want to make sure that the digital euro is not programmable money. It's not money that's programmed to be only used to buy groceries, and you cannot use it to buy alcohol or anything like that. just to be very clear on that point, that this is not in scope of the digital euro at all, but we're only looking at conditional payments, so including conditions that upon a certain event or time, then a payment would be triggered.
Great. Okay, any last comments on that, and the last question from any of the other panelists?
I would just add to that I guess the question of privacy now, of course, we know that the ECB will not be looking into the data and all of those things, but it's also part of trust, right? And because it's going to be distributed by mostly credit institutions, then the question is, how do consumers trust their credit institutions? According to, we did a research of general public this summer, where at least 1,000 participants answered the questions. That's not a lot, but we call it a representative research. 81% said that they trust their financial institution. Of course, it's a high number maybe compared to others, but there is still 19 persons who don't trust their financial institution. And it doesn't matter that the ECB will not look into data. If they want to access digital euro, they will have to go through the banking system. So then the question is not only whether do we trust ECB or not, but it's also do we trust our credit institutions, and what can we do as a payment service providers to increase the trust of us from the point of consumer.
All right, thank you, Greta. And with that, I think we have time for 1 or 2 questions from the audience. So I don't know if anyone wants to throw a question in here to our panelists. Yes, over here at the front.
Thank you very much, Jaakko from Finland. I would have a question in particular to Greta, but others can answer as well. I mean, to pick up what you just last said on how to build credibility for PSPs as innovative service providers to customers. So you sounded quite skeptical towards digital euro, but doesn't actually the digital euro play that role? So your members could co-brand their services with ECB. That could actually give added credibility especially to PSPs, and boost competition with traditional banks who have now a privileged position in the financial system.
Oh, it's so interesting that they sound skeptical. I'm not skeptical of digital euro, at least for what I understand it to be. Maybe I don't see it as another means of payment as of yet, but I see it as an alternative to car permits, and I think to be used in a crisis situation. Because for me, coming from Lithuania, crisis is at the next door, or war is actually at the next door. So we always live with that kind of fear, maybe not fear, but just understanding that is very close. So I see digital euro as solving the problem during the crisis. So I'm not skeptical of it. I'm just I'm deciding for myself not to ask the question why. I think at this point it doesn't really matter, or maybe it's the question for the politicians to answer to themselves, to provide maybe answers later to the people. Now I'm thinking about how we can build on it, how we can build on digital euro. How can I come back to Lithuania and present digital euro to the market with all of the technical questions that they may have, because while it's an important discussion to have it right now, not a lot of market participants might be participating in the discussions. I don't know the numbers, of course, the larger ones, not sure how many small ones are participating there.
If I may add one thing, Greta was mentioning this before. So trust, of course, it's the fundamental focus here, because we really need to build trust around a system like digital euro, but the same reasoning apply also to the other payment methods. How we can make understand the consumer of today, the consumer of yesterday, and the consumer of tomorrow, that they could rely on this innovative system, is by building trust. How do we build trust? With privacy. Coming back to the previous question that Nico was saying. So actually, there are no groundbreaking innovation behind, right? I mean, there is nothing more innovative than instant payments or distributed ledger technology, blockchain. More or less, we're getting close to the same level of technology. So there is not a big technological innovation behind the system like the digital euro. But we need to show to the consumers that they can actually trust on the system. Because, for instance, when it comes to privacy, there are projects like, as we said, the planned I think it was the name by the innovation platform of the ECB, this planned transactions. So there is the anonymization of the data for the transaction through cryptography. So if we make common people understand that, this means that their data will be anonymized and they will be the only ones knowing who's the transaction part, then it's already something. So you can finally explain to your neighbor that if you do this, actually those data won't go anywhere. They're just between you and the merchant. This is the type of narrative we should also, I mean, not just the ECB, but also us as participant to this ecosystem to make them understand that this is the right version, without even mentioning security, which is another elephant in the room that it's also needed to build trust around such a system.
Indeed. Well, I think if I can take something from this panel is that there is still quite a lot of work to be done in terms of communicating to the market what is the digital euro, what's the value of it, what are the benefits from it, and I think it would be really interesting to run that survey that Revolut did once this has been disseminated a little bit more and see what's the change in the willingness to adopt a solution. But we are out of time, so thank you so much to our panelists, and thank you for a very engaging and dynamic discussion. Let's give them a big hand, please.
Thanks. Thank you, Chris, and thank you all the panelists. So we are steadily reaching the end of the conference. And for concluding, I would like to invite Madis on the stage, just for a discussion. So Madis, if I would ask, what are the, I don't know, 3 key takeaways of today which you would like to emphasize?
3? Okay, I didn't know you were going to ask for 3. But I did take notes, and it's not an easy task to summarize the full day of discussions, but I can share my notes, and you can maybe complement. Mm-hmm. So first, what I'm taking home from here is that speaking of the objectives or the benefits of digital euro, I think not everyone is understanding it the same way, depending on from which angle you're looking at it. So for us as central bankers or the public authorities, I think this concept of strategic autonomy, for example, or having really a pan-European solution, it's maybe sort of more important in our minds than it is, for example, for an average consumer. And I think we have to appreciate that. Of course, the issue of resilience that I think resonated well from different speakers. But then looking at now going just through the different groups or interested parties, we didn't talk that much about merchants. I think from a merchant's point of view, of course, resilience matters because they don't want to see interruption to their business and the sales, but also cost. So because they are the ones paying the cost for the processing of the payments, not the consumer. So it's the merchants who want to make sure that the service is provided at a reasonable cost. From the payment service providers, banks and fintechs, it seems like we still have to explain or make the case that the digital euro is also commercially a good proposition, and there's a business case also for commercial banks. And I'm not sure if we actually need to change anything, or is it a matter of explaining how it's supposed to work, or maybe there is a need to change something, but we need to have a viable business model also for the payment service providers so that they would actively be offering the digital euro to their customers. And from the point of view of fintechs, I think they are just sort of more curious at the moment what will it really mean for them and their possibilities. And then finally, the customers or the people. I realized they do appreciate the privacy as one concern that came out from these questionnaires. Resilience, I think, also is an issue to pay attention to. But then, at the end, we need to achieve a sufficient level of adoption or usage in order for all the other objectives that we're talking about really to have a meaningful impact. And I think in in the panel before the last one, it was spelled out very clearly that the consumer has to get a sense that this problem that they're facing now, it's urgent enough and clear enough so that they would actually make the switch and also put those digital euros in their wallet. And I think there were a bit sort of mixed views whether it is the case already. I actually found that some of the surveys among just general public in terms of how many would be interested in using digital euro, they were in a way quite optimistic already without people really knowing much yet about what it really means, still already suggesting that they might use this as a payment option. And then I'm going to wrap up. So practically speaking, I agree with the point that it's probably a bad idea to have many competing digital wallets, but we want to have digital euro as one payment option in the digital wallet that the customer, the person is already using and that he or she is used to. And at the end, I think it was very nicely put by using the term coexistence. So we need there has to be a good model of coexistence where there's room for private sector solutions and indeed digital euro. And digital euro infrastructure could indeed facilitate competition and make it possible for private sector operators to provide new services and in that sense allow for better competition, and perhaps digital euro could help with standardization in a way and also facilitate more competition in that sense. And finally, I thought there were different among the two members of the European Parliament who were in the room. There were different views in terms of how or I would say different levels of optimism in the sense of how easy will this debate be in the European Parliament, but I think we're hopeful that by the end of next year at least we have the legal framework in place and we can proceed faster with the project.
True. Thank you, Madis. From my side, I will just quickly, actually you covered, I think, the majority of things that I wanted to say as well from my notes. But yeah, on the last point, on the optimism or pessimism at the European Parliament level, I think, and we discussed it also during the lunch break with colleagues, I think there is, and the sensation that we got today, that there is a clear understanding and feeling that we need a digital means of payment that is under European control. A digital legal tender, so what we are trying to achieve. And true, also in the panel where I was sitting, the sensation that maybe we need to explain better what do we expect from the banks. Because in the legislation and in the rule books, all the things are there, but maybe we need to do even a better job in explaining, and vice versa also. I think the event today also makes banks realize that we need to take this seriously, because when we discussed the question if or when, it is clearly when. No? And maybe this is the triggering moment when also banks are starting to consider what do they actually need to do, how to do it in the best way so that the costs are not too large, how to benefit their users. And in general, I think also the, let's say, the problems we want to solve, as I said, in different countries they are different. And then I think from the public sector side, we see, and also looking at what is happening in the world, that the environment is ripe for digital legal tender, but we might need to do some work on the demand side so that digital euro would also be used on a daily basis, because, as said, if you don't have digital euro in your wallet, you cannot use it in a crisis, but as a payment option, you can use it also without having the digital wallet, the digital euro in your wallet. So to provide the option, the possibilities for banks to create added value to their customers and provide it as a public service without asking any fees from the Eurosystem side. So that's I think, these were my notes in addition.
Excellent. And I think for sure it was a good time to start this discussion in Estonia also and share where we stand on that project to a wider audience. Well, it's really an international audience here, but I think it's good that we have in the Baltics more of a debate on digital euro. I'm sure it will continue, but this was just an important step on that way. So I would like to thank all of you, the speakers who shared their views, and the rest of you who were here and paid attention and asked good questions. And I'm sure we will have other future discussions similar to that. Then maybe more specific already as we're further along the way. Thank you again, and you have a good afternoon.